Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about the Flash Season 8 and the Armageddon crossover event which recently concluded, and just give some overall quick thoughts and review on the overall run of episodes. Now, there'll likely be spoilers within this video, just be aware when going to this overall review. Now, Armageddon was a 5-part crossover of which all episodes consisted only on the Flash, and it centered around a being known as Despero, who emanated from the Central City within 2031. He feels despondent at the dystopian reality that he's currently in. He travels back in time to present day to destroy the Flash, as he deems the Flash responsible for his future being destroyed. Barry and Team Flash have to hold off Despero and at the same time find the real cause of the destroyed future timeline, and over the course of the story we see various other heroes and villains from the Arrowverse all become involved in either helping or hindering Barry as he tries to put things all right. So considering the fact that this was a 5-episode crossover event, would it be a return to form following the hugely ambitious but ultimately flawed Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover that we saw? It must have been around a year and a half ago now. Now, overall, I felt whilst there was good intentions, this was overall a very disappointing and lackluster crossover event. Now, the first main issue is that despite the promotion, it wasn't really a true crossover in the essence. I stated previously that it was very disappointing that we didn't get Tyler Hoechlin's Superman or Stargirl involved in the crossover events. Without doubt, those have been the two strongest CW series within the last 2 years. So people were very underwhelmed at the fact that we wouldn't see either of these characters be involved within this crossover event. But the characters that we did get, first of all, didn't feel that overall important, and second of all, they weren't even that prominent within the story itself. They really felt more that they were standalone appearances rather than anything important, and most of their roles were really insignificant, and you really wonder why they were included in terms of the overall story. Out of the appearances, the most significant were probably Ray Palmer, played by Brandon Routh from Legends of Tomorrow, and also Jefferson Pierce from Black Lightning. Those are the characters that probably had the more substantial roles, but they were only really in it from one episode. Ray Palmer appeared in the first episode, and I believe Jefferson appears in the third episode. Now, the real issue, in terms of its overall problem, was the 4th episode, where we come to a future timeline where essentially Eobard Thawne is the Flash of that particular timeline. And we saw various versions of Sentinel or Alex Danvers that we all know from Supergirl, Ryan Wilder's Batwoman, and Ryan Choi, the new Atom from Legends of Tomorrow. And to be honest with you, they're just alternate versions. They're not even the actual characters from the current storylines. And none of them meant anything throughout this crossover event. They spent the entire 4th episode just talking about feelings and relationships, all of the traits that people criticise the CW for, and it all just felt such a waste. This easily could have had just the main Flash cast members, and you didn't really have to include these characters at all. So when I watched this episode, I just felt, what was the point of including all of these characters? If you're going to spend the time to bring back certain characters from other shows, you better utilise them fully or don't use them at all. I can only imagine it would have been very frustrating for many fans, particularly of Batwoman and Alex Danvers, to see these characters coming back. If you're a fan of these shows which have been running for a long time on the CW, to see them used in such a sparse and weak manner would have been very frustrating to watch. We then have to talk about Despero, the main villain, who was really built up as a big powerful villain certainly at the start of this crossover event, but if we look at him throughout the course of the story, he very much ends up being very much of an impotent and wasted character. In the beginning of the story, he's always stating how he wants to defeat the Flash, he wants to preserve his future timeline, and we establish very much that he is on a higher power level than the Flash. But if we really think about it, if Despero feels that compelled to save his future timeline, he could kill Flash instantly, but he chooses not to. He's always holding back, giving Flash 7 extra days to sort the problem out. He's always delaying on the threat that he promises to carry out, and this really undercuts any real threat level that the show clearly wants him to have throughout the story. And it just seems that the show really couldn't sustain him as his main villain throughout the whole 5 episodes. As the arc continues, we really switch more to Reverse Flash Thawne, who seemingly replaces Despero as the main villain, and even Thawne himself. Now, I think Tom Cavanagh has been great in terms of the performance of Eobard Thawne. Going into the 8th season, it really kind of feels that he's overused at this point. He starts off initially wanting to destroy Barry because he's jealous of his speed, of course, but then we have this back and forth where we want to sympathise with Thawne because he's dying. He comes back to the current timeline in the 5th episode, but he can't preserve his physical form, so we have this back and forth debate about whether we should let him die, whether we should preserve his life. And it just feels overly familiar that we've covered this trait several times before. And even in Cavanagh's performance, there are certain points where he overplays it in terms of really delivering his overall monologues and speeches. And once again, it really undercuts Despero, who really disappears halfway through this crossover. in terms of a threatening antagonist. And we get the usual emotional speeches from certain characters. We do see the return of Jesse Martin as Joe West in the 5th episode. Some people were wondering what happened to Joe. We have the storyline where Joe had died and they had to go back in time to rescue him in many ways. So it's always good to have his overall presence. He always adds a certain amount of gravitas. But as we get to the conclusion overall, it just feels so functional. We get this supposedly spectacular battle against Despero and the Barry. And again, you're just questioning Despero's motivation. Barry, at some stage, preserves the future timeline. He established that he wasn't the cause of the future timeline destruction. It was more Eobard Thawne. So why does Despero want to destroy the Flash? He states that he wants to destroy Eobard Thawne because he's not sure whether Eobard Thawne will manifest himself later on. But why doesn't he just do it? He just stands there again, and then he comes to the decision that he wants to destroy the current timeline. His motivation just gets messed out all over the place, and then we get a very typical battle between the two. We get the revelation of the gold boots that some fans were really hyped up about because it will reflect more the comic book look of the character. But again, this just feels very mundane at this point and nothing particularly stand out or special. And Despero is just defeated too easily, and then we wrap up everything where we go to the party and everybody's celebrating again. We did get the inclusion of the new Green Arrow from the future timeline, Maya I believe her name is, but again doesn't really feel that important. Whether she will get her own spin-off series we will wait and see in the future. But that's it really in terms of the overall story. And then we get the final revelation where Damien Darhk kind of gets some sort of redemption where he goes to his death, I believe, in some sort of heaven construct, and as a result his daughter comes back in the present timeline. Will we get any reference to her in the future? I very much doubt it. And then at the end credit stinger is that we get a picture of the Central City Police Department, and then we see the return of Nora and Impulse, what we know from previous storylines, come back. So that, I suppose, will be the next story arc when the show returns. I believe it doesn't come back now till March. So we're waiting to see what happens when Nora and Impulse come back and what time travel shenanigans and implications that it cause in the future. But just overall, I just think, again, a very lackluster crossover. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't awful to watch, but I just feel it couldn't really sustain the justification of 5-episode arc. I think this could have easily been done in maybe 2 or 3 episodes overall. And like I said, I think the biggest crime was the wasting of all of the characters from the various other shows. Like I said, you could have easily had this story without them in it at all. And also the use of Despero, who started off very much of a threatening antagonist, but just became very useless, I believe, as the story continued throughout. So just a very disappointing effort. And I think if you are going to do these crossovers, you're best off getting all of the characters or none of them at all. I've recently stated that I do believe that they should try to do these crossovers every 2 years. It gives them more time to build up the story. And I do understand there are complications in terms of COVID. It may be difficult to get certain characters off the show, which is why I believe you should leave it every 2 years. And that gives the showrunners more time to plan and really make sure that you participate all of the characters from all of the shows involved. And that would make it far more of a special and indeed much more of a crossover event. So we'll wait and see what they've got planned for the next crossover event. I do believe it's coming up now to shortly the 10-year anniversary as to when the Arrowverse really took place in terms of all of the shows crossing over with one another. So surely they will try to make that more special. I'll still maintain that the best crossover within all of the Arrowverse is the Crisis on Earth X. That was a 4-part crossover, and that was truly a special, and ever since then, it's been diminishing returns, and sadly, the Flash Armageddon continues that downward trend in the crossover events within the Arrowverse. So those are my quick thoughts and feelings on the Flash Armageddon crossover event. Let me know what you think in the comments below. How do you think it compared to previous crossover events? Do you think it was superior? Do you think it was inferior? Do you feel that they should have just shortened this down to 3 episodes? Do you think this was a good idea to have all episodes consisting of The Flash? And how well do you think it will promote The Flash going forward for the later episodes of Season 8? And do you think The Flash is still strong enough to go to Season 9 and possibly Season 10? Let me know what you think in the comments. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.